Hey there, friends. Here at a stoplight downtown, going to go pick up Bill Richards, who is a long-term FCC Elder and patriarch. He and his wife, Vicki, have been members of First Christian for, probably 4 decades. And we're going to listen to the work of God in his life and hear about his involvement at church and talk about what God's done at First Christian over the years in his time. So, real excited about that. But first, let's go get some coffee. I would like 2 small black coffees. Friends, come join me for a coffee convo. Let's go get Bill. Hey friends, today I'm with Bill Richards and we're gonna have a coffee convo. Yes, indeed. Coffee convos is an opportunity for us to hear about the work of God in the lives of God's people. And Bill, you get to be one of God's people.
Thank you.
So we want to get to know you and find out about who you are and how God's made you who you are today. So tell us. Let's start there. Who are you and how did you get to who you are today? Well, let's condense that. But tell us a little bit about where you're from and your background and some things like that that people may not know about you that help us understand who you are.
Okay. East Tennessee native. Mm-hmm. Grew up in Hawkins County. Dad was a sharecropper. And we worked on a large farm, so I spent most of my time growing up on a farm until I graduated from high school. That influenced how I think a lot. Mm-hmm. My dad was a deacon in the local Baptist church. My mom was a Sunday school teacher. And by the time I was a teenager, I was involved in Sunday school as well. Yeah. So, church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and all the other dinners on the ground. Pastor was over for Sunday lunch, so that was my experience growing up. So faith came early. I made a profession. I think I was 9.
Cool.
And I was baptized in the Holston River.
Oh, yeah?
In Kingsport. Yeah.
Was it cold? Do you remember?
I know it was summertime. It was nice. I remember the singing over the water.
Oh, really?
Always a beautiful sound, still to this day. Yeah, that's cool.
That is cool. So, faith and family and farming are what your background was comprised of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, you grew up in East Tennessee, Hawkins County. What'd you do past high school? And tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Uncle Sam called.
He did. Who's Uncle Sam? Some of the kiddos today may not know what you're even talking about.
Well, actually, he didn't call officially, but all my friends were getting draft notices. So I decided that I was going to jump the gun and join the Air Force, and that's what I did.
Okay.
So went in the Air Force shortly after I got married. Got married in June. My mom passed away in August. I went in the Air Force in November, all the same year. All boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
So halfway around the world, one direction, halfway around the world, the other direction, and about 4 years of that, we came home.
Okay, 4 years. What years were those? Do you remember?
70 to 74.
Okay. So a couple of those years I was alive. Does that make you feel old?
Yes, very old.
Earlier on, when I was introducing what we're doing, going to pick up the coffee, I said something about we're gonna be interviewing Bill Richards. He's a patriarch at First Christian. He may not love being called that, but so you were in the Air Force when I was being born. How for you was was that time in the service different and eye-opening, and how did that form you in ways that were different than what your life had been in Hawkins County? You know, a Hawkins County kid going off to the world.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I came out of basic and went to tech school, you always had a roommate. Nobody lived alone in that kind of world. And so I was put in a room with an avowed Calvinist, which I had never encountered before in my life. And so we were having these huge discussions, and I found out that my theological knowledge was lacking at that point. Not that it isn't today, but it was lacking.
Yeah.
So that military experience was unusual, I think, for me, because when I went overseas, I got involved with some Christian groups.
Yeah.
And so developed some deep relationships, one of which exists to this day.
Cool.
With one of my good Christian friends in North Carolina.
Cool.
And
I've heard you refer to those years in these ways before, about it also being a very formative time in your relationship with God.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Bible discussions, scripture until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Some of it argumentative because we didn't all see things the same way, but it was good because we was all digging in the Word.
Yeah, cool.
So it was, I think that's probably unusual for a military experience.
Tell us about your wife and kids, your immediate family, what they're doing, and all that good stuff.
Vicki and I just celebrated our 50th anniversary in June.
Cool.
So we've been together. We dated for a year.
Uh-huh.
We met in the grocery store. That's where I worked at the time. And she didn't know this until we were talking before our anniversary, because we met across the meat counter. Well, she didn't realize that I was organizing the chicken on purpose in order to be behind the counter when she was shopping, because she came in every week to shop for her parents.
Well, there you go.
So that was one of those early encounters, intentional.
We met across the meat counter.
Yes. There was an old song in the day, something about a grocery store, so that was one of our anthems.
Cool. Cool. And you worked in grocery store, managing stores for how long? Quite a few
Almost
years.
25 years.
25 years.
Almost.
And what are some life and leadership lessons for you from your work experience, from farming, from being in the military, from managing stores and insurance and having your own agency now? What are some things that have been leadership lessons that that have been most helpful for you?
I would say the common denominator in that is people, and love people. One of my most difficult parts of childhood was being alone, so I don't like being alone. And I had a lot of loneliness in my childhood, and so I gravitate to people now. I think because of that.
Yeah.
And that kind of transcends all those places, is that in the end, it's about people.
Yeah.
And no matter what piece of that you're doing, if you take the people out, it's like there's nothing worthwhile.
I think that's a lot about how that's akin to how a lot of us feel about this weird COVID quarantine, not being normal kind of time. You take out the people, and it's like, well,
What else is
what is there?
Yeah.
We'll talk more about leadership lesson stuff because we're going to go to the church and talk shop about church a little bit. You have 2 kids. They live where?
2 kids. One lives here in Greenville. In fact, my daughter works with me every day, which is a special blessing.
Yeah.
My son lives in the edge of Knox County, and he has two sons, Mac and Emery, and so we don't get to see them as often. About once a month we try to see them.
Cool.
And of course, my other grandchildren are here in Greenville, so I see them regularly.
Got 4 grandkids? Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you some Bill Richards personality questions. Would you say you're more introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
Introvert?
Most people are surprised when I say that, but I'd much rather be in the background.
Okay.
I don't so much like being in the foreground.
Okay. You would say you're energized by being with people, or it drains you, What?
No, I'm energized with people, which is kind of an odd way to think about it.
Yeah, well, there are those introverted extrovert types,
Yeah.
or extroverted introvert types, or Cool. Are you more of a thinker or a feeler? Thinker. Yeah. So I would say I'm more of an intuitive feeler type who takes that stuff and data, but I process it like a thinker, I'm very intentional about the process of thinking through the feeling stuff. Mm-hmm. But I used to think I was a thinker, but I don't think I am. Why would you say you're a thinker?
Well, because I'm constantly assessing, and maybe I'm in that middle ground between the two, but I'm constantly assessing how things are going, trying to read people and apply things I've learned to circumstances and figure out what's going on and where's that person going and what are they going to do next. So that, I guess that's why I think of
thinking
myself
about the implications of those. Yeah. Are you more silly or serious?
Serious.
It's okay to be serious.
Probably most people would say serious, and I think of myself that way. Although I love jokes and funnies, and so I don't know.
Are you more early or late?
Oh, early.
Early.
Yeah, that comes from the farm. Yeah, had to go to work at 6 o'clock every day. Did that for the first 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
So I still wake up.
That's a way of life.
Yeah, it's just a way of life. It gets inside you, and you can't help it.
Are you more breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Me too.
Got to have a good breakfast.
I can eat breakfast 3 times a day.
Oh yeah, I can see. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. You've just been given an elephant. You can't sell it. You can't give it away. You can't kill it and eat it. What do you do with your elephant?
Love it and work it.
So it becomes a farm tool, is what?
In a sense, but with special care.
So we're going to take a moment and go on to church and talk shop about your experiences and our experiences there, and talk about lessons learned there.
Okay, sounds good.
We're going to head to church. Well, we're here at our Greenville campus, and Bill, this place sure looks different, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, Scott. There's lots of changes, and of course, lots of people in our congregation remember changes because they've been fairly recent in congregational history.
They have been relatively recent.
But, not that long ago, we had lecterns on the stage.
Yes.
And I remember when you first got here, you preached a little while, and I said, Scott, if you don't get out from behind that lectern, you're going to drive us all crazy because you couldn't be still back there.
Yes, that's true. There was, the pulpit was over here, and a lectern was over here. The pulpit was a little bit bigger because, of course, the pulpit's a little bit bigger. I don't think that actually registered what you said as clearly until there were a few other folks in our congregation who said something about, you're just always up there dancing. And it looks like you're dancing. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay, that's what Bill means. So yeah, there are no lecterns or pulpits up here in that sense anymore. But as you said, the physical stuff is all actually relatively new and recent in terms of the aesthetic change. Tell us a little more about FCC and what it used to be like and some folks you remember from your past. And so let's talk about FCC's former years.
Yeah, well, of course, when we began attending here, Preacher Bob was pastor. And
So you
I think
came in Bob Cox's years? Okay.
Right. We used to have Saturday morning men's prayer breakfast.
That was a big thing for a
6 or
long
7 of us would always meet on Saturday morning, have prayer time, eat breakfast, and fellowship together. And there's some of the people still around that did that. Bob Burns is one of them.
Okay.
That was part of that crew.
Cool.
Very faithful crew of people that got together.
Yeah.
And of course, Preacher Cox was, I called him the CEO of FCC because what he said went, and there wouldn't be any Catalyst coffee cups out in the worship center when Preacher Cox was here. But, he was, I think probably still is the longest serving pastor.
Yes, 21 or 2 years.
Yes.
Total. I think it's 22.
So you're on his heels.
I am.
Yeah.
Number 2.
How about that? That's kind of cool. It is. But I was thinking about this not long ago about the amount of time we've been here. And we've been here this time. We've actually been here at least twice. We've been in Greenville. We moved to Greenville 3 times. Okay. And we've been here 2 times because we were here and then we left and lived in Knoxville for a while. So all total, approaching 35 years.
Cool.
And so we've kind of seen 3 generations of people move through the church. And I was thinking the other day about Roy and Sally Reynolds and what a stalwart couple they were, faithful in service and, teaching and just living out their faith. And there's lots of others, but they're ones that came to mind when I was thinking about that history as people move through that process of serving and getting into later years where they can't. And then that generation passes.
So, you've been an elder, how many years would you say in total here at First Christian?
20 plus, probably.
Okay.
Not consistently, but off and on during that period.
Yeah. You haven't been all of my 18 years of in here, but the vast majority of them you have been. You alluded earlier to some of the challenges of when you're in a position of leadership, shepherding people under your care. When you're in a position of leadership like an elder or pastor with people under your care, some of the challenges of being aware of having to deal with situations that are difficult, that involve relational discord and conflict, things that deal with interpersonal stuff that not everybody wants others, no one wants others knowing about. One of the challenges, of course, is doing that in a way which helps the person and yet is gracious at the same time. What are some of those kinds of shepherding lessons that have changed you, that are hard, that people don't get a good glimpse into, that you can share with us without telling what you don't want to and shouldn't be telling us?
Yeah, well,
because that's harder than people realize.
I think it probably is. And sometimes, as I said before, knowing things that you kind of wish you didn't know.
Yeah.
And one of the struggles with that is being able to treat that person the way God wants you to do that,
right.
Even though you may know things that would make you feel differently inside. Mm-hmm. And that's a piece of discipline that I think that God has to give you. I don't think we have that within ourselves. Mm-hmm. But I know those are the kind of things that I pray about, because I worry about things I would say that would cause someone to turn away in that moment of crisis.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy load sometimes. It's not the only piece of it, because there's much joy in serving. Yeah. My favorite place is being here on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But those times are hard, and sometimes people expect more out of you than you are able to do.
You should not want to be a teacher, the scripture says.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit, but still talk church leadership things, vision. We talk about serving as a majorly important part of what we're asking people to do in their involvement at First Christian, especially even on Sunday mornings. What are some of the ways that you've seen that be a real important part of who we've become, and how it's helping change people and helping them grow?
Oh, I think that's huge. And I was talking to someone this week. We were talking about that faithfulness and being here on Sunday morning. And that's just a piece of serving, because there's tons of things that go on during the week that aren't here in this building.
Absolutely.
But the Sunday morning piece you get to see in a little bit different way, and you see people. Uh-huh. And we were talking about how that serving, it's not just an outward thing of physical things that you're doing around the church, but it starts to change your heart over time.
Yeah.
And that's what serving does. And I think it's why, God calls us to be like Jesus, like his son. And he's the ultimate servant. And so when we serve, in whatever capacity that is, we look a little more like him than we did before. And consistency in that in your life is huge. And your heart tracks. You know, there's something I heard a long time ago that if you just start doing loving things for a person, it's much easier to love them in the end, and your feelings will follow that.
Yeah.
There's some of that principle in serving. The more you serve, the more joy there is in your life, and the closer you get to Jesus. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the practicing of our faith is a faith-building exercise in that sense, and serving is a really key piece of that. I remember when we were talking early on about making the shift to fully saying Sunday morning is worship and serve. Sunday school had been something we weren't really doing as much of at the time, and we had been doing small groups off campus, on campus as well. But we were making some of those transitions on Sunday mornings. And I remember one of the things we said is that a classroom where we just get smarter doesn't exercise that information. It doesn't practice that stuff. And so I think turning Sunday mornings into a laboratory for that, even if in, frankly, very relatively tiny ways. There are a couple folks I know who show up in the mornings that nobody's aware of, but they faithfully show up and they're sweeping and they're cleaning and they're doing things that help make this a place that welcomes folks. Like you said, I think that's a key piece of learning to love the other like Jesus.
I think it's one of those places that helps people see Jesus in us.
Yeah, that's good.
And so the reflection of him comes through more clearly as we serve.
That's good.
And I think when we started talking about that differently in leadership, it was I don't know if I want to call it a paradigm shift, but it was a huge shift.
It was big.
in our congregation, and people have responded to that by stepping up. And like I said, some are doing things they never thought they would do.
Yeah.
And even leading in those different places that they didn't think they would lead in, but they have.
And we're seeing that help us build up new folks for taking on leadership responsibilities, leading a small group, leading a serving team, in classrooms, teaching kids, and being a small group leader for them. So that serving structure helps feed all of that across the multiple campuses, multiple services. That's a key piece of all that. Thanks, Bill, for doing another coffee convo with us. It's good to hear some of your background and some of your experience here at First Christian and get to know you a little bit more. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Coffee Convos.